A guy who I referred to on radio as Deep Throat, a guy who was in all of the meetings. And when he saw the debt and the wall that was coming our way, and he told me about this time is when it was coming. He said, everybody is reading, Glenn. Everybody I know is reading on the Weimar Republic. Read up on it. Well, I did. But I didn't just read up on hyperinflation. I read up on the whole thing. And we are mirroring almost every mistake that they made that eventually led to hyperinflation, a breakdown of society, and eventually totalitarianism. In Weimar, once the average middle-class person realized that it didn't matter what they did, it didn't matter, they'll never get ahead. And this is what you're seeing now in Atlanta on the lower class. It doesn't matter what they do. They'll take out Section 8 housing 2 years from now because they know they'll never get ahead. When that moved in Germany from the lower class to the middle class lost hope. And then they decided they could rack up any bill, because it was falling apart anyway. They could drink, they could act, they could do whatever they wanted, because nothing mattered. They lost hope. And when people lose hope, they let loose. Morals in the Weimar Republic went out the window. It was a free-for-all. The attitude was evidenced by the Weimar Cabaret. I don't remember this movie, except I remember it being very, very popular. I think there was a famous song from it in 1972. I was 8 years old when this came out. So I never even seen it. But I gotta watch it now, because this is based on the Weimar era cabaret. Clubs and shows in Germany degraded into mostly overtly sexual performances. Prostitution in Germany was decriminalized. Why? Because the government knew just opiate the masses. They started to say, you take drugs, you can drink, everything is fine, do it all. Because they wanted people to forget and keep themselves busy. Now, put yourself in this time period. My grandfather wouldn't even say the word pregnant in the 1970s. I remember my grandfather saying, hey, ladies, let's not use that word here. What? But he came from a time where Ricky and Lucy had to sleep in separate beds. We didn't even talk about it. This was decades. This was decades before Elvis shook his hips, and that was considered dirty. This was a total and complete breakdown of society because of a magic mixture here of several things that we are starting to mirror. But the key was the average person felt hopeless. How did that happen? Well, the first thing that happened was they had to destroy faith in Germany. Well, they didn't have to. They just did. Back in World War I, the churches had become a political organ. The government just went in and they told everybody that, God's saying that you got to go fight World War I, and God's saying that we're going to be the victors. And so when it ended, and it's tragic, the church had no credibility, because they had merged the church and the state into one political organ. German Christian movement. So people lost faith. They didn't believe it anymore. And then they moved into just sexuality of epic proportions, hedonism, free expression. They were actively encouraged. Everything became cool except being moral. And a lot of it was packaged in women's rights. That's how they legalized prostitution. Women have a right to do that. And then in the cabaret, they started to openly mock religion, faith, everything. Everything that society once had considered moral, it had been mocked. It was the time of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may all die. Another story that came up recently that I read, and I've been holding it because it bothered me, and until I saw the Atlanta story, I didn't know how I was going to share it with you. I was reminded of the Weimar Cabaret when I read a review from a Seattle paper of a theater show written by two women in Seattle. And the show was mocking religion, Tea Party goers, me, really everything. And I read this review, and here's how the reviewer summed up my character. The prophet, because they're making fun of me and my religious views, the prophet, Glenn Beck, withdrew from public life as a TV soldier to the upper reaches of an empty high-rise. He then continued, while cackling with glee as Beck wept. This is the guy who's the reporter on this. Cackling with glee as Beck wept.